Hey Bhubalan, I have a requirement for you, man. We need to access the user locations, and you know what? I'm already using the Jetpack Compose application, so it has to integrate with that. And we need to use the Hilt Android, and I want to access the user location when application goes in the background as well. So which means we need to create the foreground service, right? As per the new recommendation. So let's make it a foreground services, and you know what, when you create the foreground services, typically we'll use for the services, right? So instead of services, a document recommended us to go for the work manager. Let's go for the work manager as well. And if you go for a work manager, then we'll have to create the worker. Maybe let's do it with a coroutine worker as well. Okay, this is a requirement. And also please understand this, all this has to be done in the MVVM design button. So this is a requirement, but just go ahead and do that. And this is a kind of requirement mostly you're going to get it in the work environment as well. So it's mostly closely aligned with your work environment. And let's see how we're going to access the user locations and what are the different things we need to consider and all. Okay, it's a A to Z guide, so please go through the each and every step of the video. If you skip anything, then probably you will get into the problem in later point in time when you're running the application. So then you will go back and check the documentation one after another. So anyhow, I have a medium post for this. I'll share it, share those information as well. I'm just reading through those medium documentation that will help you to understand what exactly I mean. Okay, so first we'll have to understand the source of location. When you're trying to access the locations, Android internally uses these four different combination to determine the user location. Like it may use the GPS or Wi-Fi signals or mobile network, or even some cases it uses the sensor to determine the current user locations. And you know what, accessing the user location is one of the most power consuming operation, because a system must back up your mobile, and you'll have to look for the signals like a GPS or Wi-Fi, etc., and it has to perform, like it has to make a network operations to determine your current location, and then finally it has to perform the operation like a CPU kind of operation to gives you the latitude and longitude. Okay, so these four different kind of things will definitely consume your power. That's why Google documentation saying you that limit your location access. Accessing the location is one of the power consuming process, so that's why Android trying to restrict the location access as much as possible. That's why they introduced this kind of restriction, like Android 8.0 onwards they don't support the background location access, which means earlier and all we will be having the background services, right, that gonna keep running in our mobile, and it keep accessing all the information in the background as well, so without notifying to the user something's running in the background. So they completely remove the background services, seems like, on Android 8.0 onwards, which means you cannot able to access the user location when your application in the background, completely background. I'm not talking about the foreground services. Okay, and the alternatively they suggest you to go for the foreground services if you wanted to access the user location continuously, which means you need to show the foreground notification on the top, or by showing to the user that something's running in the background, and then you are allowed to access the user location continuously. Again, I'll remind you, if foreground service is running on the top, which means technically your system is in a foreground, not in the background. Though your voice goes background, if you are creating the foreground services like showing the foreground notification on the top, which means technically your app is in a foreground. Okay, and one more thing is access background location is completely restricted in Android 10.0. if your manifest are having this kind of permission like access background locations, you just need to remove it. Otherwise, if you really need this one, just go through this document and find out the use cases and trying to convince Google Play Store saying that you really need this permissions. Most probably if you're having this access background locations, they don't allow your application to be approved, so that you need to keep in mind. And the next one is available API services to access the location. There are 3 different APIs are available to access the current location. Like you can use for fused location API provider. If your mobile has the Play Store services installed, then definitely go for the fused location provider API, which means this API internally optimized in such a way that it will find the best way to find your locations. Okay, so maybe this location can be shared between the different applications installed within your mobile as well. For example, if one application accesses the location, maybe fused location provider will access the location and store in somewhere. If some other application requesting the location at the same time, maybe that specific information that got fetched from other application can be served for this application as well. So it's internally managed to optimize this one. So the suggestion is goes to the fused location provider API. The second one is a location manager. This was the one where it was there very long time. Like we just create the location manager, then we'll have to some callback functions to access the current location. So this is another way you can access it, but the recommendation is a fused location API. Another end, we have a geofencing client API, which will help you to understand whether the users enter in the geo boundary or exit in the geo boundary kind of calculations. It also optimized one, but see whether you can able to use this specific API for your requirement. This example will show you how to access the user location by using the fused location provider, like creating the object, and then we just setting the request, and we'll have to look for the callback. Once you get it, just update that one. The next one is a location manager. So Android framework API that also help you to get the location information. So this is how it's supposed to be done. And we have another way, like a geofencing client, and this is a pseudocode for this one. And these are just a sample code. Let's get into our requirement. We'll have to go into step-by-step details to build our application. Okay, so there are 7 steps we need to follow. The first one is we need to declare the permission, the manifest file. Yes, we need to have the force notification permission. We'll have to have the course location, and we have some other file location as well, and we need to have the international locations too. Actually, here I have not shown the force notification permission, but we need to have the force notification permission as well. I can show it here. In my Android manifest file, you could see those locations being declared here, and these are the 4 locations you need to have. And also, if you look at this UI, it has this one like a post notification as well. So you need to have those 4 things. Let me copy and paste it here. Perfect. And the next one is accuracy. To access the user location, you need to ask for the 2 permission. One is access course permission and access find permissions. Once you request the user, then user may prompted with dialog, runtime dialog, permission dialog, where he chosen to given one of these 2 options. One is approximate, another one is precious. If user gives you the approximate permission, then the location the system gives you would be this approximately 3 square kilometers. So maybe it won't give the precious location where the user is, but it's gonna give you the location like within a 3 square kilometer, which means it's not it would be like approximate locations. If the user chosen to give the precious location, then the location the system provides you would be the 50-meter radius. Okay, it's more accurate. You can determine the user location exactly where it is. And if user chooses to go to approximate, which means user give the permission of like access course permissions. If user gives the precious, then which means access find location. So access find location is a top permissions, and this one is the lowest permission. Even if you get the approximate one, you can still able to access the location. That's a good things to know. Okay, that's perfectly fine. Then we need to request the permission to the user, right? In Jetpack Compose, when you requesting the permissions, you need to use like there is some library called as accompanist permissions. This library suggests you to create one rational UI to the user to give the justification like why you need the permission, and also that's why I'm creating this kind of UI. Where I'm just giving the justification why I need a permission, like I'm showing this image and I'm providing 3 options. One is a dismiss, one is a check-in, another one is a settings, which means if I to check in, invoke the system dialog where it's supposed to give the permission. If you dismiss, I'll dismiss it. Some cases even I do check in, if I choose and don't give the permission for multiple times, then sometimes check-in, like invoking the system, the permission dialog will not work after some point in time. Next time, even if you're trying to invoke the permission dialog, it won't appear. Okay, in that cases, user can use this settings screen, directly go into the settings, give the appropriate permissions as and when needed. So that's a logic behind it. I already designed the permission box for you. To invoke the permission boxes, you just have to create a composable function like this, like add location permission buttons, and where I just created this permission box and I provided the lottie like animations, and here I'm providing the description why I need the permission. Here I just provide the required permissions, the permission I'm requesting for. Here I'm just giving the what permission out of it I really required in order to execute this callback functions. And this is a simple permission box. I can able to update this one as well here. Perfect. The next one is I like to create the PiLocationManager. It's a custom class that helped me to get the location updates. Okay, so the first one is I created some classes like exception classes. If something goes wrong, I'll throw the exceptions here. Then I'll create the PiLocationManager, like I create a fuse location client. I just make it as a lazy, which means only if required it's gonna be initialized and give it to me. And this is where like a location update, here you just have to give the millisecond, how many millisecond you need it, and then it's written the flow of locations. And in the callback flow, just checking if the permission is not provided, just throw these exceptions. If network or GPS is not enabled, throw those exceptions. Otherwise, I'm just creating this request with IS accuracy. Then I'm just creating the callback functions here, and on result, I'm just getting the result out of it, and then I'm sending the result back to the caller. Okay, who are calling it, who are listening for this location update, gonna get this information like location informations. And then I'm just requesting for the requesting location update. I'm just providing the request and callback, and then I'm putting the main loop, and finally I'm waiting await close, which means until otherwise somebody closing this coroutines, and this function will be executed, and then it will remove the location updates. So simple functions. And this additional functions, the one I showed here, like check permissions and is network enables, will be available here. Just make use of it. First thing is just simple things like to access the location to only one time. Okay, how I supposed to do is like I've created a weather repository that help you to get the weather information based on the latitude and longitude. You could have seen it here. And the next one is error manager. These steps you can refer it as part of the GitHub repository. And we have a location manager here. I'm just taking the instance of location manager, and I have a function like a request count location. Here I'm creating the scope. It's a supervisor scope, and making the dispatcher IO, which means I'm just executing my location update on top of this specific scope. If I cancel this scope, then I can able to cancel this operation as well. That's a simple idea. So I'm creating some supervisor scope with IO, and I'm making the location manager location update. So I just wanted to location update every 1 minute. So I'm just giving the 1000 here, and on each I'm just keep collecting the locations. Probably you'll get the locations here. Then I'm just passing this location to the fetch weather for location. You can refer the source code where I'm just fetching the location based on, I'm fetching the weather based on this two location. And then finally what I'm doing is like I'm canceling this coroutine scope, which means after I'm accessing the location only once, I'm just canceling that coroutine scope, which means entire operation will be cancelled and the location update will be removed. This function will be fired. This function will be fired. First location, remove the location updates, which means I'm no more gonna listening for the location updates. Okay, as simple as that. And then finally what I'm doing is I'm launching it into the coroutine scope. Okay, this is simple things. Now we can able to access the location in the foreground at least only once. Okay, so now we wanted to create, we want to keep accessing the location in the foreground services. Okay, that's where the second part will come into the picture. To access the foreground service, first we need to create the foreground notification. Okay, to create the foreground service and foreground notification, we'll have to have some plugins. Just refer this documentation. Like I'm using the toml file, we need to have this kind of frameworks in order to do this one. Please refer my toml file as well for more details. I have already provided the source code for you. And here, first of all, I just want to create the foreground information, because foreground service has to be on the top, right? So create a foreground service. I'm just writing the CoroutineWorker as extension. So get notification builder. I'm just creating the notification builder here. If I'm running on the Android Go, and then I have to create a channel, otherwise channel is not required if I'm running in the lowest version. But this code is no English required, because now we have the Android 13, right? So this code is really required, so I have this code as well. Notification compact builder, I'm just setting the title and content icon, and ongoing is equal to true, it has to be true, and adding the delete option here. And this will help me to swipe out and remove that notification on the top, so that entire foreground service will be cancelled. And finally, I'm just creating the foreground info based on the compact builder. This is how you're supposed to create foreground info, and just given the foreground notification ID. This ID is must, because we wanted to keep updating that foreground notifications, right? So for that we need this one, and we have to build it. And then finally you have to say that it is a foreground service type. This is must. This piece of code is must, otherwise you will not able to access the location in the foreground services. When your application goes in the background, you will not able to access the location even though you are running the foreground service. So this piece of code is very much important if you are running in the Android Q and above. Otherwise this is not required. Okay, that's the first step you need to do. So just I'm putting the piece of codes to create the foreground info. And the second one is to create a channel. Just use this piece of code. And to post the notification, we already built this navigation builder, right? This is a navigation builder we already created. Keep this navigation builder with reference with you, and you just post me the message. I'm just updating this message, like I'm just using the notification manager front and notify. I'm just using the same notification ID whatever I specified here, which is 400. And then I'm saying that notification builder dot set content, and I'm just setting this content as a message here, setting that message as a content, and then building it. So this will notify or update the notification which already been there on the top. Okay, this part is done. We just have a piece of codes on the top we need to build all together right now. So to create the foreground services, we need to have the CoroutineWorkers. So to create a CoroutineWorkers, I just create a PiLocationWorker. I'm just doing the system inject to do these two, and then we have to create the CoroutineWorkers. And I'm building the navigation builder, right? I'm just using the which gonna gives this one, right? Having the reference here, and then I'm using the PiLocation provider entry point, and then that gonna gives me the location manager and PiRepository. This is the only way you can able to access the external object inside the CoroutineWorker by using the Hilt. So these are the Hilt provided object. Okay, to do this one, we'll have to have this entry point and install the single time component, and I have to make a do work. This is where you all do the core operation. Like first of all, I'm taking the entry point here by using the entry point accessor, and then from the application I'm saying that PiLocation provider entry point, this is the one, like this has to given here, that gonna give me the entry point. From the entry point I can able to access the location manager and the weather repository others as well. And then I'm first thing I supposed to do is I have to create the foreground services. So again, I'm just calling the create foreground info. I'm just passing this builder here, and just I'm setting the set foreground, and here I'm setting the foreground informations. And then I'm creating the JSON to do some manipulation as well. There is where I'm just taking the location updates. Okay, I'm calling the PiLocationManager and saying that location update for every 1 minute I wanted to give the update. If anything throw the exception, I just print the exceptions here, otherwise I keep collecting the data. And here I have a weather repository. Once I get the location, I have to call the weather repository to get the appropriate weather information with these locations. Once my request is success, I'm taking out the country name, location name and country name, and the temperature, as well as a field like information here. And then I'm just constructing this message and passing it to the post notification, so that notification will show like where you are currently in, and what is the current temperature and what is the field like kind of things. And I'm just sending this specific message like a weather response back to the listener. If the idea is, let's say if I'm starting the foreground services that is running on the top, and also I'm having the UI, I'm moving the location from one location to another location. In that specific case, I just want to update both the UIs, one is top and as well as the UI. Okay, to notify the UI, I'm just using this progress mechanism, so that whoever is like scheduling this worker can listen for this progress and can able to get the data out of it. That's an idea. So I'm just taking this response and converting to a string, because we cannot pass the object, and then passing it to set progress, and until otherwise this specific scope is cancelled, you just need to do these operations. If you remove this code, this won't be work. So you need this code in order to keep collecting the data until otherwise the scope is cancelled. Okay, and then finally we are just returning the success. And yeah, now our coroutine worker is done. We need to schedule the coroutine worker into the WorkManager. For that, before that, we just wanted to put this 2 pieces of code into the AndroidManifest. This is very important to invoke the worker, HiltWorker. Okay, and then we have to say the foreground service is the location. We have to say the system foreground service. Application class, we have to have the configuration provider, and we'll have to inject this into worker factory, and then finally we'll have to have this piece of code as well, so in order to satisfy the Hilt worker. And finally we have this piece of code to create the foreground service and stop the foreground service. To create the foreground service, I'm just taking the instance of WorkManager, I'm building the constraints, I'm building the request, I'm just enqueue this work here, and I'm creating the JSON here, and then I'm listening for this worker whatever created before, and then saying the observe forever. If it gives me any progress information, I told you before, right? Here we are just give the progress information, right? It's just passing this forward. So as and when somebody passing this progress information, just collect this information here, and then having it here, and then get the web response out of it, and then post the response to update with the response here. And then stop CoroutineWorker, that gonna cancel this work information by tag. This tag is already attached to this one. Okay, by using this one we can able to cancel this one. Okay, this is gonna help you to access the location information. So you just have to have the button, that button gonna trigger this one, and another button gonna trigger the stop calls. Otherwise this specific things gonna help you to fetch the location using the foreground services. That's it from now. So you have the source code here, you go ahead and refer it. You have the documentation here. If you want, go and refer this as well. If you have any, still if you guys have any questions, just put in the comment section. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching the video. Bye bye.